Einstein tells us that thinking is hard work. And if anybody would know that, it would be he. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, and we inspire. And we are at our final chapter on How Successful People Think, a book by John C. Maxwell that explains how the 95% crowd thinks versus the 5% crowd thinks, the achievers. Once again, I would like to urge you to go into the description box, click on a series that I have called The Owner's Manual for Your Brain. It's a same subject, different perspective. When you hear things from different angles, they click more often. Give yourself that opportunity. We're going to go over and review, this is part 25 of How Successful People Think. Once again, of course, huge shout out to John C. Maxwell. Tremendously good book. I recommend you read it. We're going to review it in kind of a unique way. And since this channel is dedicated to my son Eli, I'm going to use one of his favorite heroes to help explain the book, and you'll see some points here. Okay, first we're going to use Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all times in basketball, and go over what is his thinking. How did he become Steph Curry, the super all-star? All right, and when doing that, we're going to go over the stuff from the book at the same time, so you'll see that there's a congruency here. Greatness is achieved in similar ways. First thing is, there's a process. All right, well, you know that before every game, as a matter of fact, people love to film it. Steph comes out and he does all his fancy dribbling and fancy ball handling and so on and so forth. He takes 2 basketballs and things like that, and you look at it, and he's getting his head straight, ready for the game. He has a process. We have a process. I call it quiet thinking time. Set aside a few minutes every day to think about things. You have to have a process. There has to be a how-to. There has to be a way to do it. Okay, so once you're in the process, what is it? What are the different components? Now keep in mind, like anything else where a person becomes successful, if you want to be a successful thinker, how do you do it? You break it down into its smallest components. That's what we're going to do right now with a quick review. I've already gone over in detail on each of these different topics. If you're just looking at this, I strongly recommend you go back and you look at each individual discussion that we had on these topics. The first thing is big picture thinking. Okay, Mr. Curry is, what is big picture thinking for Mr. Curry? Well, he wants to win the championship. All right, to win the championship, you have to win the game. You have to score more points. So you have to be better offensively and defensively than the other team. Big picture thinking. He's not just thinking about one particular game. He's thinking about the big prize, which is the championship. Creative thinking. If you've ever seen Steph Curry play, wow. Is there a guy that's creative? Now, one of the things, you know, as a basketball player myself, one of the things that was very challenging was when you had the ball and you would drive by your guy and you're up near the basket and you're looking to lay it up, more often than not, there was a big guy that was there ready to block your shot. Okay, in basketball, they call that going up into the trees, okay, because the branches are so big. You have to be creative on how you get that ball up there. And if you've ever seen Steph Curry, you know that when there's a big guy there, he'll take the ball and he'll throw it. The arc on the ball will be so high, or he's under the basket, he puts spin on the ball. He's creative in how he's going to put the ball in the basket. And he's very focused. Focus thinking. How am I going to do that? How am I going to get the ball? When people know that Steph Curry is the man, all right, you don't want to give him any airspace because he's going to put it in the hole. He has to remain focused. The first thing is he has to be able to receive the ball. So if you ever watch him play, he's a man in motion. He's going and going and going and going like the Energizer rabbit. And he's going, and until he's able to find an opening and receive the ball, he keeps his focus. He's realistic in his thinking. All right? He doesn't receive the ball typically down right near the basket because then everybody is right there. He receives the ball in a position where he is able to do something. So he's realistic about what he has to do. He's not there to challenge somebody that's 7 feet tall right underneath the basket. What he wants to do is put himself in the best position where he can achieve. You want to do that as well. How do you do that? With realistic thinking. Strategic thinking. My goodness, we've gone over that already. What is his strategy? How am I going to go about receiving the ball in that position? How am I going to make that cut? I'm keeping my eye on the defensive guy. If he's playing me over here, I'm going to run over there. If he comes out on top, I'm going to cut back door. All of these different strategies go through your mind. And these are not things that just come to you like that. They come from practice. They come from thinking. Possibility thinking. What is it that I can do? Now, Steph Curry realized that if you shoot from the outside and you hit the shot, you're going to get 3 points instead of 2 points if you're inside the arc. That's the point. He said, you know what? I have a greater possibility of helping my team because I have the skill of being able to shoot so well by becoming a 3-point shooter. He took a look at the possibility and became a great player. Somebody that everybody has to plan for when they play against his team. Reflective thinking. You know absolutely that he studies the other team that he's playing against. He looks at film over and over and over and over again to see, and also at himself, to see what he's doing. And you know, sometimes you get into a slump, and when you get into a slump, you say to yourself, okay, what was I doing then that I'm not doing now? The only way to do that is to have reflective thinking, is to go over what you've done and to visualize what you can do. Rejecting popular thinking. When you can say right now that Steph Curry is probably the one person that has changed the game more than anyone else in recent memory. Why? Now it's a 3-point league. Back in my day, the big man was so important, so critical. Let's get the ball, let's bring it close to the basket. They still do that. But right now, because of Steph Curry, because of his thinking, people are more focused on the 3-point shot. Why? Because if you shoot 33% from 3, that's the same as shooting 50% from 2. You only have to be successful 1 out of 3 times instead of being every other time. Does that make sense? So he rejected the popular thinking of let's get the ball to the big man and said, you know what? I'm going to be in a position where I can change the game. Shared thinking. He has clearly taken the game, changed it, and now everybody thinks that way. Everybody needs to have a 3-point shooter. As a matter of fact, they even categorize people. They call a guy, he's a 3 and D player. What does that mean? That means he can shoot the 3 and he can play defense. Nobody ever used that term back in my day. The game has changed. Shared thinking. That thinking now permeates throughout the entire NBA. Unselfish thinking. My goodness. If you ever watch Steph Curry play, he's not somebody that has to have the ball in his hands all the time. As a matter of fact, he works to not be in that position. He works to be in the position where he's moving and moving and moving, and then can get the ball and make a quick move or take a quick shot. He's unselfish. And if you ever watch him play, I enjoy, of course, his shooting, but I love his passes. He's so unselfish. And when he is in a position and makes a move and the other team is so focused on Steph Curry, he knows that if there were two guys on him, guess what? Somebody's got an opening. He's very unselfish. He shares the ball, and by doing that, you create more shots for yourself, because when other people are scoring, then they say, well, I can't really step off. I got to stay with my guy. Unselfish thinking, critical. And most importantly, of course, is the bottom line. What do I have to do? What do we have to do in order to win the game? Whether that's defense, whether that's pressing, whether that's rebounding, whether that's shooting, whatever the thing is, they focus on the bottom line. How do we get to the bottom line? There are statistics that will help them to see where they're doing well or where they're not doing well. If they're turning the ball over, if they're giving the ball to the other team, if they're making mistakes, they say, we've got to be more careful. You follow what I'm saying? You take a look at the different statistics. If the rebounding statistics, if one team has tremendously larger number of rebounds, you're saying to yourself, we got to block out better. These statistics help you to focus on what you need, and that's by paying attention to the bottom line. Okay, we're going to end our series with words from John C. Maxwell himself. And this is some very good quotes that really make the point about how successful people think. One final thought. I trust you've enjoyed this series. As you move forward, I wish you success and suggest that you keep these thoughts in your mind. First, everything begins with a thought. Quote, life consists of what a man is thinking about all day. And that's from Ralph Waldo Emerson, The Importance of Thinking. Number two, a quote from John Locke. What we think determines who we are. Who we are determines what we do. And the quote, the actions of men are the best interpreters of their thoughts. Unquote. A lot of people talk, but you can tell what somebody's thinking by their actions. Does that make sense? Third, our thoughts determine our destiny. Our destiny determines our legacy. Here's a quote from James Allen. You are today where your thoughts have brought you. You will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. Unquote. Fourth one, people who go to the top think differently than others. My goodness, I have preached this from day one. People in the 95% group think the same way, do the same things. People in the 5% group think the same way, do the same things, only their thinking is different. That's what we've been pointing out in this series. We've gone over the different aspects. We've broken how successful people think into its smallest components. Embrace that. Make it a part of you. Nothing limits achievement like small thinking. Nothing expands possibilities like unleashed thinking. And that's a quote from William Arthur Ward. You've got to think big. You're going to find that when you think you're thinking big, if you reflect on that 10 years down the road, you're going to say, boy, I didn't think big enough. And the example I used in the video was the Wright brothers that think, oh boy, we want to fly. Today, we're landing on Mars. Could they have even pictured that? Big picture thinking. And since John C. Maxwell is a pastor, and his books are not so religiously based. That's, you don't have to be like a religious zealot to enjoy his books. His books don't come from that angle. His books come from the angle of common sense. But we're going to end it with a quote that he used. Okay, we can change the way we think. The quote, whatever things are true, noble, just, pure, lovely, are of good report. If there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, think on those things. Unquote. And that's from Paul the Apostle. Once again, Huge shout out to John C. Maxwell. I encourage you to take, I know there's 25 videos, but you don't have to listen to every single one, but pick out what you want. They're titled, it's why it's important, how to go about doing it. There's the blueprint there for you. This is a very important series because once again, what separates the 5%er from the 95%er is how they think. And always remember, don't ration the passion. Fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.